Oh yeah, and then even communication and functioning, right? Signal transduction, right? We think about signals within cells or between cells, right? But we're realizing that a lot of these biofilms, especially like the different types, because we can now characterize them now, understand different composites, things like, for example, signaling within the cell. We're seeing similar signaling with with electrical charges between biofilms or through biofilms, right? And you can kind of think about it like, think about your house, right? There's a transformer not too far away from you that is taking that high voltage line and stepping it down, and then to then there's another transformer that basically goes to like your actual like electrical pole to your house, right? And then those that go into your basically your mains, and then you get your like you get your iPod, iPhone charger that's going to step it down, right? There's all that minutia as it structures, right? And so think about when you go break up this whole homogenizing, right? Imagine what life was like when before there was multicellular life, right? Like we look at us, right? We have two genomes. We have our own genome, but we have also our mitochondrial genome, right? Kind of weird, right? How does that happen? It's the powerhouse of the cell. Well, like the current theory is that in the three kind of domains of life, bacteria, archaea, and eukaryota, right? You like basically eukaryotes refer to like a true nucleus. The hypothesis is that there was a period of stress where these archaea, these anaerobes, would basically go and basically graze and eat other microbes, and then the mitochondria got scooped up and then incorporated, and that may have actually happened inside of a biofilm that was undisturbed, uninterrupted. There was enough stability from that environment, and there was a stressful event, competition, chemical change, right? Like the first mass extinction was the great oxygenation event, right? Where literally the sea was purple. The sea was purple because there was no oxygen, because photosynthesis hasn't evolved yet. And then when it developed, it took off and then caused this mass extinction event. So it's crazy when you think about like, how did we get to here as multicellular complex organisms, organelles and organs, all these things, from the simple aspect. The biofilm was that nice, cozy little incubator for for geological agents that allowed that kind of to happen, right? So it is kind of, it's, you can go pretty deep, but like the aspect too is to understand rather than to know, because you can understand a lot of intuition by understanding like kind of that kind of scale and variant in time. The more you understand something, or attempt not to know it, but to just understand it, you realize other connections, right? And our world, we live in a world of knowing, and the reason why we're having this conversation right now is because someone figured out how to engineer electrical phenomena, right? Like Faraday, he was a demonstrator of electricity in the 19th century, late 1800s, early 1900s. And he was like kind of like almost like these like big Van der Graaf things and moving things back and forth and charges. And someone asked him like, "What use is this?" And he replied, "What use is a child?" And then you had James Clerk Maxwell, who came around and wrote the Maxwell equations, wrote out equations to describe electromagnetic phenomena that allowed us to engineer and make all these devices, right? It's electrical engineering is kind of his magic. And I think we're at a similar point now with biology, with microbiology, where these microbiology phenomena that exist in the world, and we can articulate them and talk about them, but we don't have we're beginning to formalize these laws that we can observe, or not so much laws, but understandings about how things commune, right? And what's amazing is that these things have been possibly going on for as long as there's been life, like, microbial basic life. It's some of the oldest, but, it took a while to evolve an organism to have conceptualization skills to make sense of it. So the idea is like, as we push to know, I think we can come to a bigger discovery holistically by understanding as well, right? Because that's where the big advances come through, when you kind of, don't say eureka. Eureka means it worked this time. Most discoveries happen when you say, "Huh, that's kind of weird."
Yeah, what the fuck was that?
What was that? Let's talk about it, right? Oh, that can't happen. That's impossible, right? So that's the whole thing. Science progresses by a generation, right? So as someone who's purports to be objective in science is what we don't know, you get people that get biased by that own kind of axiom.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're talking about all that electricity stuff, and there's even bacteria out there who basically have electrical cables, like iron reducing bacteria, which they have a metabolism where like oxidized iron is usually in a solid form. Think rust or, orange rocks and things like that. So these bacteria actually release little cables more or less that then go to the solid iron and then transfer electrons to it. So they're basically shooting electricity at rocks to then change the form of the iron, and then you'd be able to use that to harvest energy. So a lot of like pretty fancy human technology is being done on a very small scale by microorganisms. And even with the biofilm communication, this is once again speculative. This is something I heard someone tell me about who's just kind of on the forefront of this research, but they're trying to identify structural proteins produced by certain bacteria in biofilms related to communication. And some of the protein structure actually looks like a barrel. It's like a tube is when they look at the shape of the protein. So it's like maybe there's a biofilm and it has a bunch of these barrel-shaped proteins that are actually creating open channels that then molecules or electrons or whatever can then travel through. And, another level of this kind of bacteria biofilm architecture. Like they're building pretty cool stuff and they don't even need to use tools.
So they're actually building cables.
Yeah, perhaps.
To shoot information back and forth in it. I love it. I fucking love it.